Okay, hello guys. Welcome to our today's lesson, where the topic today is about changing the subject. Okay, so let's move into the first part about what is the subject of a formula. Okay, so now I'll give example in physics. You can find here that is a formula. Velocity equals to the initial velocity plus acceleration times time taken. Okay, so now you don't need to know what is the equation that really means, but now here you can find here, V is on the left of the equation, right? So now we called V as the subject, okay? So maybe on the right equation, the initial velocity U, acceleration A, and the time taken T, maybe initial velocity and acceleration are a constant number. So maybe T is a variable, okay? So now we'll just definite the equations and we'll give you some definitions about it, okay? So you can say V is changing with T, okay? So maybe you can just consider it as a car is traveling on the road, right? You can find the car has an initial velocity, but the car is accelerates, right? Because the car has an engine outside. So engine will give some power on it and it will increase the speed, right? So you can find with time passing by, the velocity of the car is also changing, okay? So that is the equation of velocity equals to initial velocity plus acceleration times time taken, okay? That is it, okay? So that is for the changing in the object, okay? So now there are some basic operations right here. You can find there's examples like, so in this equation is that v squared equals to u squared plus 2as, and it wants to change the u as the subject of this square. Okay, so that means you have to just put u alone at the left side of the equation. Okay, so maybe you can find here, like we can first changing the place of it, right? We are just placing u at one side. So in this equation, we can just put 2as on the left, right? So on the two part or two side of the equation, you can minus 2as together. So now you can find the left equation as v squared minus 2as, right? And on the right equation, there's only u squared. Okay, so that equation can be written as u squared equals to v squared minus 2as, right? Okay, so now you can set u right here equals to positive or negative square root v squared minus 2as, right? Okay, but now we have to just make the subject on the left, right? So that becomes u equals to positive or negative square root v squared minus 2as. Okay, that's for these equations. And also we can just dealing with roots and fractions. Okay, you can find here just an example like 2 equals to 2 pi times square root L over G, and we want to make L as a subject. So first, we can just transfer the place for different variables. Like here, you can first place 2 pi on the bottom of the fractions, or you can also say 2 pi is now the denominator for t over 2 pi, right? So that is t over 2 pi equals to square root L over G, right? So in this equation, you can set 2 squared over 4 pi squared equals to L over G, and you can just multiply by G to isolate L, and now L can be written as G times T squared over 4 pi squared, okay? That is a transformation about the equation. So the meaning of the last equation is just the same as the first equation. We just maybe simplify it, okay? Okay. And here is some problems like when subject appears twice. Okay, so you are just maybe your job is just to making them on the one side and just trying to simplify it. Okay, so here is a strategy. First, we can move all the terms containing the target letter on one side. And then we are moving other terms to the other side, okay? And then maybe to factorize or like to simplify it and only leave the target variables on the left side of the equation. Okay, so let's have an example like here. If we want to make x as a subject of the formula y equals to 2x plus 3 over x minus 5. So first, you can just try to consider, maybe for this equation, we can just multiply x minus 5 on both sides, right? So now on the left side, it becomes y times x minus 5 equals to 2x plus 3. Okay, then you can expand the equations on the left. So y times x equals to xy, right? Y times negative 5 equals to negative 5y. Okay, so now the equation transfers into xy minus 5y equals to 2x plus 3. Okay, now we said we just want x, right? We just want x to become the subject. So you can just transfer 2x on the left equals to 5y. Now you can just leave x on one side. So can become x times y minus 2 equals to 5y plus 3. Sorry, here's 5x, right? Here's 5x plus, plus 3 again. Oh, yeah. So sorry. 5y plus 3. Okay. Okay, here's 5y plus 3. So here we have 5y plus 3. You can just divide it y minus 2 onto both sides. So x now equals to 5y plus 3 over y minus 2. Okay, that is for these equations. Okay, and there is some deliberate practice for you. Okay, you can just pause the video and try to think out yourself. But if you want to follow with me, you can also just try to understand each step of my equations. Okay. So for the first problem is that make A as a subject of the V equals to U plus AT, right? So here you can just making A as a subject. So we're just first moving A on the one side. So this equation, we can just try to transfer it. Okay, so like first we can write that as V minus U, right? V minus U equals to acceleration times time taken. Okay, here's equals to AT. So now you can just divide it T on the both side. So A now equals to V minus U over T, right? That is for first equation, like here is A. And maybe on the second equations, you can find A equals to pi r squared plus pi r L, right? We want to making the R as a subject, right? So first, you can find here is pi r squared plus pi r L. You can first just divide it pi on the both side. So it becomes r squared plus rl equals to A, maybe here is over pi, right? That is it. And here you can find there's a hint. You just want to make r on the left side. So maybe you can try to first maybe make it r squared plus rl, and to make full, it does a square number. Okay. So here we can add it l squared over 4. So here it becomes r squared plus rl plus maybe l squared, sorry, l squared over 4. And on the right, we have also added a new l squared over 4. Okay. On the left side, it becomes r plus l over 2 squared equals to a over pi plus l squared over 4. So now you can just to maybe make a square root on both sides. So now r equals to negative l over 2 plus negative a over pi plus l squared over 4. Okay, that is for the second equations. Okay, and also if you're very familiar with the equations, you can also use like the negative b plus negative square root a squared b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, you can also use that equations. And for the third equation we can find here is volume equals to 4 over 3 pi r. This is the equation for the ball, but we don't need to understand it. We just want to make r on the one side. So first, we're just trying to make r on the one side, that is r cubed. Then it equals to 3v over 4 pi, right? That is the equation. And then you can make a cubic root, right? So r cubed equals to 3v over 4 pi. You can just maybe first make a cube root on the both sides. So now r cubed equals to r, right? So it just transfers into r. And maybe here, 3v over 4 pi can just added a cube root. That is for the third equation. Okay. And for the fourth problem, to make x as a subject of y equals to x plus a over x, right? So now we can just transfer it as here the sy equals to x plus a, right? So now you can just move x on the left side, that it becomes x times y minus 1 equals to a, okay? That is the equation. And then you can just write it as x equals to a over y minus 1, right? We're just maybe divided the y minus 1 on the both sides, okay? So now you can find there's only x on the left side, right? Okay, that is for the first problem. And for the last m as a subject, so also like here, first multiplies m minus 4 on the both, m plus 4 on the both side. So it becomes pm plus 4p equals to m minus 3, right? And then you can just try to move it, right? So here, trying to move it, and it becomes, because you want it to y, so it's p minus 1m equals to minus 3 minus 4p, right? And then it can just transfers into negative 3 minus 4p over p minus 1. That is m equals to these equations, right? Okay, that is for this today's our lesson. Hope you can just understanding what I'm saying right now, and just hoping you to understand how to transfer the subject. Okay, so this was today's lesson. See you next time. Bye.